tradition, I don't know, there's so many people, I have had so many people this week, and I just, wonderful people. I've had a wonderful reception to come and visit, and I'm just thrilled to met so many people. And I never knew that there was so many different kinds of wonderful food in Brazil. I mean, I'm going back to the lunch. So, anyway, thank you so much for all of it. I wish I could give you a big hug in return for things you've done for me. So, this morning I would like to be a little bit of the basic science and show you something about what we're learning about airways and bicarbonate and that sort of thing. I hope this doesn't take much longer than the time that I've been allotted, so I'll try to move relatively fast, and I hope I don't confuse you in doing so. But let's see this. You're right. You're right? Yeah. No, I'll probably lost over here. Okay. All right, now I'd like to begin by making a confession. I have been having an extramarital affair with this young lady for several years. And I've given her a lot of affection and attention, and she's been very kind to me also. Now, some of you know that I was really first in love with this lady, and I still care a lot about her. But at the moment, Mike Harvey has most of my attention and affection. So, Mike Harvey and cystic fibrosis is what occupies my thoughts mainly these days. But more seriously, this is why we're here. On the right, you see on the left, you see a so-called normal lung. On the right, you see a lung from a patient with cystic fibrosis. And I don't think that you have to be a very sophisticated pathologist to realize that this lung will not breathe. So why? Why is it all the airways filled up with mucus and plugs and inspissations so that patients cannot live? Well, as I said, my life sort of began with Clara, and Clara taught me a lot, because she said that the problem that I have is that normally there's a nice door for me to get into the cell, and when I go, I always go with my partner, Nate, Sonia, and we have a nice trip across the cell together. But in cystic fibrosis, that door is all messed up. It's either not there or it's too small for me to get through. So Nate can't get me through, and he's kind of torn between whether he should go or stay, between love and duty. So we know from this, Laura told us that the basic problem with cystic fibrosis is that anions do not get across the cell membrane when they involve what is now called a gene, CFTR, and a protein that makes that door. So here's the issue. This is the reason I kind of split up with Cora, is because she wouldn't tell me what she had to do with mucoviscidosis. Now, the disease is thick, sticky mucus, but how and what she had to do with, what she had to do with, I'll push it home, with thick, sticky mucus, she wouldn't say. Goes to the pool. Yeah, I see. Okay. Yeah. I should hang this in my beard. All right, is that better? All right, I'm sorry. Thank you for telling me. Okay, so anyway, she was very quiet about it, so she didn't say anything about it. Then I met Mike Garvey. And Garvey said, where have you been all my life? Because these guys, Dorn and Anderson, discovered that I have something to do with this in 1968. That's 50 years ago. And actually, I think that's the same anniversary that we have here at Campinas, no? Campinas was started in 1968, so we've got two anniversaries now, the introduction of bicarbonate to cystic fibrosis at Which University. So in 1968, Dorn and Anderson showed that for the trypsin output, those patients that had some pancreas left, there was virtually no bicarbonate secretion compared to normal, you see abundant bicarbonate secretion. So that's the clue. Okay, the pancreas is the organ that handles bicarbonate. And yet cystic fibrosis, it gets destroyed, and that does not get destroyed, does not produce pancreatic juice that has adequate bicarbonate concentration. Okay, so if we take that a step further and look at the other organs that are affected in this disease, we see that all of those organs that are targeted, they secrete mucus, except for the sweat glands. And incidentally, the sweat glands escape pathological change. They're physiologically affected, they're abnormal, but pathologically they don't have pathological structural changes because they don't secrete mucus. If you look at these others, there's a poor bicarbonate secretion in all the organs that we have investigated so far, so that the two go together. Where we secrete bicarbonate, we secrete mucus, we don't have enough bicarbonate, we affect the mucus. So what's going on? So let me point out that bicarbonate and chloride both go through CFTR. That's the door that chloride can get through, what we learned earlier. That door is made by the CFTR gene, produces a protein that makes a channel, the anion channel that's inserted to the membranes of CF-affected cells. But that channel, that protein, does not handle does not handle chloride and bicarbonate the same. So here is data presented by Wallum several years ago, in which he shows that if you measure the bicarbonate to chloride transport ratios, and those patients that have very low ratios here, compared to those that have high ratios here, these are pancreatic insufficient. These patients with the low ratios have no pancreas. And yet those that have high ratios, the pancreas survives and they're able to digest their food. Another observation just recently made by Mike Welch in this group shows that if we take mixed affected cells, that is cells that express only the delta 508 mutation, with cells that are non-CF, that are normal wild type cells, and we just mix them proportionally, 100% wild type versus 100% affected. That is in the scale here. So, I'm losing my button. There. Okay, so we go gradually from 50% to 100% wild type in the mixture of the two types of cells. And you see that for CFTR and chloride transport, it saturates very quickly. You get half of the cells that are wild type, you get full function of the epithelium. That doesn't happen with bicarbonate. With bicarbonate, you have to have all of the cells wild type to get 100% function. So that tells us again that bicarbonate and chloride are being handled differently by CFTR. So what does bicarbonate then have to do with mucus? How is bicarbonate going to fix this big bag mucus monster? What does she have to do with him? So I'm using the light color is not showing up very well, but I hope you can see. Let's look first at what a mucus is. What is a mucin? So a mucin is a large, huge molecule that has molecular weight from 1 million to even 1 billion molecular weight units. It's a huge molecule. It's one of the largest in all of biology. And I point out at the same time that DNA is very similar to mucins. So it's a huge molecule with a lot of negative charges on it, just like mucin. These are negative charges that are all bound to the backbone of this mucin polymer. So the mucin by itself is a huge polyanion molecule, which means that it has all these negative charges fixed to it. And those negative charges are free from repelling. They repel each other. You don't like opposites attract. These are all likes, and their electrostatic and static forces push this molecule apart to extend it. Now that's very important for Mother Nature in terms of the way we handle mucus. So here's the goblet cell. Goblet cells are chock full of mucin granules, and they have to sit there until they get instructions to dump the mucin granules into the lumen so that mucin can become mucus. So in order to do that, Mother Nature packs these things into little tiny granules and puts them in there with a huge amount of calcium and at a low pH. Now I think you can see that when you do that, these positive ions counteract or combine with the negative ions, and therefore the electrostatic forces between the negative ions are neutralized. And this molecule can then condense into a very tiny structure, condensed and compacted, and there it's stored in these granules until it receives a signal to be released, at which point it extends by exploding into a much larger molecule. And that happens within a couple of seconds. And it changes volumes from this thing to something that's 500 to 1,000 times larger than it was in the granule. This is just an idea of the explosion of these granules, the time it takes for a granule to increase its radius as it exits the slide. You see that within just a couple of 3 seconds, the radius has changed several orders of magnitude. So what does bicarbonate have to do with this then? Okay. Well, if you think for just a second, bicarbonate has a negative charge, and it also can ionize to carbonate, which has 2 negative charges. So if we put bicarbonate in the media for the mucin granule to enter, the bicarbonate will compete with the negative charges on the molecule, on the mucin molecule, and pull the calcium away. And it will combine with the protons to neutralize them. So it leaves the negative charges associated with the mucin exposed, and they repel and expand rapidly. So there we have the key to what happens whenever a mucin molecule, when a mucin granule is released, and the mucins must then mature from this compact form to this long extended molecule where it's in its normal functional state in the lumen. If we don't have bicarbonate, then we don't pull away the calcium protons, and the molecule remains condensed and compacted. So, can we prove this? Okay, let's test it. Let's see what happens. Okay, I've had the fortune to have these wonderful students working in my laboratory, and I'm sorry we can't really see their results very well. And this is an automatic slide. I have not been able to figure out how to make this guy behave, so he's going to show you, and now I have to go back and to get him to behave. But here they took a piece of the cervical tract and perfused it with a solution in order to collect the mucus that came from it. They also did it with strips of the ileum, of the intestine. So and basically we got exactly the same response for both tissues. So what they're doing is stimulating the mucus to be released or be secreted and released, and then testing the effect of bicarbonate on it. And so what you see, what I would like for you to see, is that when they had no bicarbonate, there was no mucus release. When they inhibited bicarbonate going through CFTR, with this inhibitor called BIH101, they had no mucus release. If they blocked the bicarbonate transport with this inhibitor called DIS, they had no mucus release. But if they had no inhibitors and just a normal amount of bicarbonate in the medium, they got a striking release of bicarbonate of mucus within the first 5 minutes, which tapered off in the next 20 minutes. So the message here is that if you don't have bicarbonate, you're going to have thick, sticky mucus. This is another experiment that was performed by Gunnar Hansen and his student, Gustafsson. And this is a little bit complicated, but I will just say that as they increased the concentration of bicarbonate on the apical surface of this exposed intestinal epithelium, ileum, they were able to collect the mucus and then measure the thickness. So as they added and increased the concentration of bicarbonate, they were able to remove more and more free mucus. Again, showing that it's the bicarbonate that's important for expanding the mucus, making it solubilized enough so that you can take it actually off of the epithelium. Otherwise, it sticks and you can't remove it. Now, let's go to where we want to be with the airways. Airway surface liquid, ASL. I'll be saying ASL or ASL for the rest of the talk, I suspect. Okay. What are we talking about here? We're going to be talking about the airway surface liquid, but mainly in the small airways. And I hope to show you some things about the small airways that you may not have appreciated before. But the small airways are generally a diameter of less than about 2 millimeters. And obviously they're the ones that follow the large airways. There's a big difference between these two. The small airways, very small diameters that go from about a generation of about 8 or 9 in the lungs down to about 18. So these guys are in something of a handicap compared to the large airways because they do not have submucosal glands. So these glands and submucosal glands provide the airway surface fluid for the large airways up there. They also don't have cartilage. There are cartilage rings in the large airways here, so that these airways do not collapse, but the small airways can collapse. And when they collapse, then you have to get them open. And as you know, it's hard to blow up a balloon when you first start. So these airways are a little bit more difficult in terms of opening and closing, and they are then, I think, the primary site for infection and where the disease of cystic fibrosis begins and where it is most fatal. These structures are destroyed and blocked. So let's look at the airway surface liquid, which is the surface liquid that coats the epithelium on both the large and the small airways. That's where our problems are. If we cut that small airway in cross-section, this is what it looks like. Now you might say, like most pathologists told me, or anatomists told me before, oh, that's pretty, it looks like a daisy. But why does it look like a daisy? If you're a physiologist, you want to know why. Not that it's pretty, how is it working? So why does it have these folds, plicated folds? It goes up in ridges and down into furrows, ridges. Because the epithelial surface is all along here. So if we look at the normal on this side, we see that the lumen is open and these cells are fairly decent. On this side, the cystic fibrosis bronchiole, which is filled up with mucus, the situation is much different. So these cells have been expanded and sulcated with the cytokines and immunokines of the immune system here, trying to get rid of the bacteria. So the question is, what's going on? Why does this thing look like that? My students first told me that, well, it's like that because when you breathe, you inhale So you have to expand this thing, and that increases the surface area without stretching it, because it's spiky. It's like an organ, So the airway surface fluid is sitting here on the surface of all this, and the fluid lines should extend down like so, and the fluid should normally be open. So this is what we're going to try to look at. Now, I'm going to, at this point, I'm probably